He sat there, brooding in his palace of towering pillars and silken tapestries. Beside him, a scribe at the ready, waiting for him to mutter the words that would describe his reign. 10,000 generations, Emperor Qin Shi Huang said in a ghostly whisper that echoed through the vast hallways. In his heart, the emperor believed his dynasty would last that long, and he wanted to be around long enough to see it. And then, he gave the orders, prompting the scribe's brush to dance on the wooden strips. Regional governors, local officials, scholars, and commoners were all tasked with one monumental quest: obtain an elixir that would grant the emperor immortality. Even in the grand scheme of his reign, in the shadow of the Great Wall which he started, and the silent vigil of the Terracotta Army discovered long after his death, the elusive elixir of eternal life became a symbol of Qin Shi Huang's obsession, and perhaps desperation to hold on to power. This is the fascinating life of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. Born in 259 BC to King Zhuangxiang and his wife, Zhao Ji, Ying Zheng's life was meant for something grand. His father was at the time a hostage in the state of Zhao, a circumstance that exposed the young prince to court intrigues from an early age. His mother was formerly a concubine of a rich merchant named Lu Bue, who rose to prominence due to his association with the royal family. When Ying Jing was just 9 years old, his father ascended the throne of Qin. However, his reign was short-lived, and he passed away just after 3 years. Thus, at the age of 13, Ying Zheng found himself proclaimed as King of Qin. Given his youth, the real power initially lay in the hands of his regent Lu Bue, who was aware of the importance of controlling the young king. Consequently, he orchestrated a plan to maintain his influence. Wanting to keep watch over the young, impressionable king, Lu Bue just had the right person for the job. It came in the form of Lao Ai, a man who supposedly had a giant penis. It was so big that it could have been used as an axle for a wooden carriage. Lu Bue devised a plan to employ Lao Ai as a secret consort for Queen Dowager, exploiting Lao Ai's sexual prowess to satisfy the queen's needs. In order to bring this plan to fruition, the queen and Lu Bue strategized a false castration to facilitate Lao Ai's admission into the palace as a fake eunuch. Eventually, this relationship would threaten Ying Zheng's place on the throne, as unbeknownst to him, Lao Ai fathered 2 children with his mother. Lao Ai, seeing an opportunity, started to plot his way to power. As the queen's lover and the father of 2 royal bastards, he was in a unique position to usurp the throne. His plot hinged on his 2 sons assuming the throne after Ying Zheng, thereby giving him control over the Qin state. Eventually, he organized a coup with 1,000 followers against Ying Zheng, intending to depose the young king. However, Lao Ai had underestimated Ying Zheng's abilities. The king was no mindless pawn. After pursuing an investigation on Lao Ai, Ying Zheng uncovered the plot against him, and he punished the conspirators in the swiftest and most brutal fashion. Lao Ai was publicly torn apart by chariots, a gruesome spectacle meant to warn others who dared to threaten the young king's claim to the throne. The 2 bastards were executed, and the Queen Dowager was put under house arrest. The participants of the revolt were exiled or enslaved, effectively eradicating any threat to Ying Zheng's rule. In this dark chapter of his life, Ying Zheng tasted betrayal and the intoxicating power of his position, lessons that would serve him well in his quest for unification. Qin Shi Huang was now in a unique position, a position that granted him both immense power and peril. Though his accomplishments were monumental, Huang had made himself many enemies. This led to several assassination attempts on his life. The first recorded attempt on Huang's life came before he was an emperor. It was done by a man named Jing Ke, hired by the king of Yan to stop Qin's army from pressing forward. Jing Ke carried a map of Dukang, a document that promised Yan's surrender, and a concealed dagger. As he approached Huang under the pretense of a diplomatic mission, Jing Ke revealed his dagger, pulling Huang by his left sleeve and attempting to land a fatal blow. Huang, however, managed to reel back in time, evading the initial assault. In a frantic attempt to defend himself, Huang reached for his sword, but at that moment it became stuck within its scabbard. To evade Jing Kei's continued attempts, Huang maneuvered around a pillar, buying himself some time. Meanwhile, a court doctor saw the commotion and bravely defended his lord, slamming Jing Kei with his medicine bag. This gave Huang enough time to pull his sword, striking Jing Kei in the thigh. He followed it up with 8 slashes. As a grim consequence of his failed assassination attempt, Jing Kei was brutally executed, his limbs torn apart. The second significant attempt came from a famous lute player in Huang's court, Gao Jianli, who happened to be Jing Kei's close friend. When he was summoned to play for Huang, one of his loyalists guessed Gao Jianli's plans and thwarted them. However, because he was such a skilled musician, Huang didn't immediately order his execution. Instead, his eyes were gouged out, but he was still allowed to play in the court, even allowing him to play in close proximity. However, Gao Jianli never forgot about vengeance. After preparing his lute with a weighted slab of lead, he swung at the king's head during one of his performances. Unfortunately, he missed, prompting Huang to finally order his execution. Huang had one ambitious goal: the unification of China. The China of Huang's era was fragmented, with several states continually at war with each other, a period known as the Warring States era. Qin Shi Huang dreamt of a unified China. At the young age of 22, he began his quest to make this a reality. Huang's approach to unification was ruthless and efficient. He built upon the strong foundation led by his predecessors to strengthen the state of Qin, both economically and militarily. His statesmanship was marked by cunning diplomacy, strategic alliances, and, when necessary, decisive military action. The first state to fall was Han in 230 BC. The Qin state, benefiting from a series of reformations and a robust military, capitalized on Han's weakened state following several conflicts. Through swift military operations, Huang's forces annexed Han, paving the way for the subjugation of other states. The state of Zhao, already having faced the brunt of Qin's military might in previous conflicts, was the next to fall. In 228 BC, after protracted warfare, Zhao succumbed to Qin's overwhelming power and strategic warfare. Sensing the inevitability of their fate, the states of Wei and Chu mounted defensive efforts against Huang. Despite their resistance, Wei was subdued in 225 BC, demonstrating the formidable power and strategy of the Qin state. Chu, the largest state in terms of territory and population, put forth a fierce resistance, but in 223 BC it also fell under Huang's rule. The state of Yan, located in the far north, surrendered in 222 BC. Its capitulation was a significant milestone, extending Qin's influence over a vast expanse. The following year, in 221 BC, Huang turned his attention to Qi, the last stronghold against his dominance. Despite initial resistance, Qi, primarily isolated from the earlier conflicts, was ill-prepared to withstand the onslaught and succumbed to Qin, marking the final piece in Huang's grand vision of a unified China. With this, the map of China was painted with one color, the color of Qin. Conquering one state was no easy feat, let alone multiple states, proving Qin Shi Huang's strategic genius. After the unification of China, it was here that Ying Zheng officially declared himself as Qin Shi Huang, or the first emperor of Qin. One of Huang's most significant and enduring legacies is the initial construction of the Great Wall of China, one of the world's most notable architectural feats. The wall was initially constructed to defend the newly unified Chinese empire from potential invasions, particularly from the nomadic tribes of the north. Before his reign, individual states had already built walls along their borders for defense. But Huang found this lacking. Instead, he wanted to unify this defensive system and make it stretch for thousands of miles. As breathtaking as the Great Wall of China is, it was unfortunately burdened by thousands of soldiers, peasants, prisoners, and commoners who worked under harrowing conditions. As a result, many died during its initial construction during Huang's reign. While the Great Wall as we know it today was built largely during the Ming Dynasty, Huang's ambition fueled its initial construction, laying the foundations for the monumental man-made structure. The Terracotta Army is another one of Huang's remarkable legacies. Discovered in 1974 near Xi'an, the site contains thousands of life-size terracotta figures of warriors and horses arranged in battle formations, each with unique facial features, clothing, and weaponry. These were believed to have been created to accompany the emperor in the afterlife, serving as his guard against enemies and ensuring his rule and military might continue in the next world. Unfortunately, just like the Great Wall, this phenomenal task involved thousands of workers, with many probably dying during its construction. Nevertheless, the incredible figures showed Huang's obsession with immortality and his desperate attempt to hold on to power even in the afterlife. It remains one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of the 20th century, offering valuable insights into China's imperial past and the first emperor's rule. Living in fear of assassination and rebellion, Huang developed an intense paranoia that dictated much of his later actions. While this stemmed from the several attempts on his life before he became emperor, it also came from the growing dread of mortality that overshadowed his vast empire. To thwart any attempts on his life, Huang began living as a recluse. He constructed a network of palaces, each interconnected but shrouded in secrecy. He frequently moved between them, never sleeping in the same place twice in order to confound potential assassins. This paranoia even extended to his travels. Huang rarely announced his travel plans, often traveling in an enclosed carriage that obscured his presence. He also constructed roads to enable swift escape if necessary, and he would often travel with doubles to deceive potential assassins. While these measures were quite extreme, Huang's paranoia reached terrifying heights when a meteor crashed on Dongjun in 211 BC. It was seen at the time as a sign that the gods were no longer in favor of Huang's rule. Upon closer investigation, Huang discovered ominous writings on the meteor, which said, "The first emperor will die, and his land will be divided." Huang asked everyone within the vicinity who wrote it, but when nobody came forward, he ordered everyone's execution. So it was no surprise that Huang developed an immense obsession with immortality. This fueled a relentless search for an elixir that would grant him eternal life. He began sending expeditions far and wide across the kingdom and even into unknown parts of the world, seeking this elusive potion. At his command, countless scholars, officials, and commoners were dispatched to find the secrets to immortality. His desperate attempts to find the elixir proved fruitless, however, as Huang met his inevitable end. Ironically, it came about during one of his quests for immortality. According to historians, the emperor may have died from years of ingesting mercury pills concocted by his alchemists and court physicians who believed it to be an elixir of life. His death was kept undisclosed as his entourage returned to the capital. The delay in the announcement of his death allowed his prime minister, Li Si, and the chief eunuch, Zhao Gao, to alter the emperor's will. The heir apparent, Fu Su, was ordered to off himself, paving the way for his younger son, Hu Hai, to become the second emperor of the Qin dynasty. The succession didn't go smoothly, though, and the Qin dynasty quickly crumbled after Huang's death. Despite his brutal rule and the collapse of his dynasty soon after his death, Qin Shi Huang's legacy is one of the most impactful in Chinese history. His unification of China ended centuries of warfare and brought about a centralized government that standardized script, currency, and measurements, helping shape modern-day China. We hope today's video helped inform you about some of the lesser-known topics in Asian history, and as always, thanks for watching.